Welcome back to the Singing Teachers Talk podcast. I've made like Jason Derulo and I'm riding solo today, diving into one of the arguably unsung heroes of teaching success, the studio setup. The do's, the don'ts, the mights, the shoulda, woulda, couldas, basically the snog, marry, avoid of the teaching room, if you will. Whether you're teaching from your spare room, a swanky studio, or something gloriously in between, let's explore what deserves a spot on your studio setup checklist and what might just need showing the door. I am hugely guilty for running over time and therefore running a bit behind schedule. And I know I'm not the only one. You can just get really into it, can't you? Doing a particular thing, getting all excited, and before you know it, it's 30 minutes after you should have finished, and you're rushing to the loo before the next client arrives, or rushing to marinate your chicken because you want a timely dinner after finishing for the day so you don't get acid reflux. A wall clock can be really beneficial, as it means everyone knows what you're doing when you check the time, and no one feels like they're being tuned out by us looking at a phone, for example. But sometimes a phone and the apps you get on there are really useful too. Fellow singing teacher and my pal Sarah Joyce, who joined me and Kat Ogden for episode 69 of the podcast on understanding pregnancy for the singer and the self-employed, finds herself using a stopwatch timer whilst teaching, something which she sets on her phone and rests on her piano music stand so that she has it in eyeline. Particularly helpful for when teaching in institutions where sessions are planned back to back and you really can't afford to lose that 10-minute gap to go pee. We may find ourselves doing breathing exercises like measuring the singer's maximum phonation time or MPT, and so we'll need access to that clock or stopwatch to time the singer's extended hiss and then to time the phonation sustain as well. I've actually adopted Sarah's system too, although sometimes I still find myself running over because the phone can get hidden behind stacks of sheet music. Which reminds me, Sarah and Kat's babies, who were just still little bumps when we chatted for the podcast a few years ago, must soon be turning 3. So happy birthday, little ones! A clock isn't just useful for timekeeping though, but to also monitor how long we're spending on a particular part of the lesson. Have we chatted a lot versus singing? Versus focusing on a particular exercise, versus do we actually need to factor in a bit of a break now because we've been belting for the last 5 minutes, versus is there enough time for a roundup and a cool down? A good clock in the singing studio isn't just for the teacher. It gives your students a gentle sense of structure, great for neurodiverse singers, because we can point to the clock and say for 5 minutes, we'll do a catch up. Then when the hand comes to this symbol, we'll be doing a warm-up, etc., etc. So they know what to expect. It allows for pacing in real time and can bring quiet reassurance and respect, really, for both your time and theirs. Is it too late to set a New Year's resolution? This one is pretty much a given. Every singing teacher will ideally have access to a piano. Now, it doesn't have to be a baby grand, but if it is, aren't you doing well for yourself? Acoustic versus electric, number of keys, size, and maintenance is a topic for another day, which we hope to cover. But ideally, we'll have something with a solid set of keys, perhaps weighted, and a decent pedal. When I taught at a dance school, I used to take my own keyboard with me as one wasn't provided in the room. So transferability might be a required consideration for you if you're in a similar position. Otherwise, institutions will likely and ideally have a piano or keyboard in the room for you to use. On a few occasions, when I went to teach at the dance school with my transferable keyboard, I would reach into my bag and realize I had forgotten to pack the plug, which is no use to anyone. And on one occasion, I unpacked the plug to realize the wire had become exposed, meaning it wasn't safe to use. So then I had to drag up a piano app on my phone or even press play on some previous recordings I'd made, which I had labeled with specific pitch ranges. But it wasn't as reliable as the piano itself. Having a piano means we can work across appropriate scale patterns, target training to specific and accurate pitch ranges, and accompany. as well as giving the student an opportunity to build a relationship with the piano, whether that's learning a bit of music theory to develop oral and musicianship skills, for pitching work, or even for self-accompanying for the artist who wants to use keys, writes on keys, or will have keys as part of their work and sets. If you are buying a piano for your own private teaching room, consider where it will be positioned. In my old teaching space in my previous house, my piano was against the back wall, meaning my back would be to the student. This meant I had to turn and twist my neck to see them, demonstrate and maybe interact, contributing to what ended up being a deviated larynx. Now, my piano, which in case it helps, is a very reliable 88-key electric Yamaha Clavinova, is positioned in the room where I can see straight ahead at the student, so hopefully my larynx hasn't gone on another walk. Whether you're playing backing tracks, piano recordings, or full orchestrations, you want a pair of speakers that can offer a clarity and volume that supports the vocal task. I remember when I was performing a triple contract on ships, my fellow performer and my very good friend had brought with her some owl-shaped speakers that you could plug into your computer, through which we played episode after episode after episode of Downton Abbey. And whilst that served us greatly, and I'm very appreciative of that, laptop speakers or some little plug-in ones just might not offer the quality that you want in a studio setting. This is not an advert, but I thought I would share with you what I use. So I have a Bose Soundlink Max speaker, which has a Bluetooth setting, so singers can connect their own devices and play their tracks through them directly. But most importantly, they're portable, so they can come with me to other teaching spaces other than my own. And good news is you can put them on your expenses list. Having a simple, reliable way to record the singing lesson, whether that's exercises, short technical explanations, or the entire thing if you want to, is invaluable. For the singer, this can help in reinforcing accountability. It builds independence, acts as a reminder of what was explored when other parts of life get busy and we forget. And it lets them continue giving attention to their craft in a really focused way between sessions. Recordings are a great way to measure progress, revisiting older playbacks compared to newer ones, and recognizing the development that has occurred. It's a way to make the learning stick and to give them something tangible when the voice of doubt creeps in. And recording can also be really supportive for students with neurodivergent learning who need the benefit of repeated exposure. Sometimes you might ask a student if they could hear a difference in a particular vocal exercise or task, to which they can't. But we can. Having a recording can help bring more awareness to change or shift, getting the singer more on side to continue exploring down a particular path that you think might be beneficial for them. Also, it gives us an opportunity to reflect on the lesson. Did we talk too much? Were we clear with our instruction? How was the structure? Did we try and get through a bit too much? Were we a bit too slow? Some teachers will record the session themselves, which is fairly easy to do with online sessions over a platform like Zoom, and we don't need to be tech wizards to do so either. A smartphone, a voice memo app, or an affordable handheld recorder does the job. If I am working with somebody online, I will often record that my end and then upload it to a student portal area via the app My Music Staff for them to then download and use. If you're teaching in an institution, it's likely that you won't be permitted to record the student on your own personal device, but in higher education, it might be possible for the singer to record their sessions themselves. So perhaps ask them to bring a recording device with them to each lesson so that they have control over that. It is important to note that if we are recording, storing, or sharing video or audio recordings in which a singer can be identified, whether through their image, voice, name, this constitutes the processing of personal data under the UK GDPR. We will need to make sure we are compliant with data protection regulations, and if we are processing this data as part of our business or teaching practice, we are also likely required to register with the Information Commissioner's Office, or the ICO, and pay an annual data protection fee unless exempt. we had West End performer and singing teacher Ollie Christopher come and join us for a chat for episode 186, talking about balancing a teaching and performance career. For Ollie, a mirror is an essential part of the singing studio, a silent but mighty teaching assistant. It's not about creating self-consciousness or encouraging critical over-analysis, but instead it's about building awareness. A mirror offers real-time feedback so that a singer can observe the likes of postural habits and holding patterns in the body, as well as create new shapes for different qualities with aid of this biofeedback. A lot of singers will be happy to turn their attention to the mirror, but we may also need to remind ourselves that many performers have complicated relationships with their bodies. And so we need to be sensitive and clear about the intention of using a mirror, reminding them that what they see is data, not judgment. It may also be useful to consider the position of the mirror in the room so that you can observe the singer whilst they observe themselves. Sometimes you'll guide a singer to focus on their shoulders, but their eye line actually tells you they're looking at their feet. I'd probably opt for a full-length mirror over a handheld one so that the singer can view their entire body from head to toe more easily. And so they are also free to do any other movements whilst observing themselves. And hopefully most institution singing rooms will have a mirror included. However, if that is not the case and the department aren't able to provide one, a handheld mirror that you can pack and take along with you is better than nothing. I have one and it's really just a salon mirror that now I check the back of my hair with. And if nothing else, the mirror lets you give yourself a once-over halfway through a teaching day to make sure that you're not too frazzled and to check that you don't have spinach in your teeth from lunch. About 9 years ago, I witnessed one of the most powerful and moving pieces of theatre I have seen to date. Mona Golombek's one-woman show, The Pianist of Willesden Lane, which I saw at the Other Palace in London. And it tells the true story of Golombek's mother, Lisa, an aspiring pianist who was sent to Great Britain as a Jewish refugee by the Kindertransport. I remember I was wearing a mustard-coloured, oversized cardigan, and it looked much better than it sounds, but it soon repurposed itself as my hanky because I sobbed my way through that show like a woman in mourning. So, my friends, never be without a box, a packet, or a wad of tissues because you'll never know when you need them. And that counts for the singing studio. It's not uncommon, unfortunately, for singers to become upset in a lesson, whether that's due to frustration, anxiety, external factors, or the power of music itself. Hopefully singers aren't coming to lesson if they have a stonking cold, but if they happen to have a virus or a seasonal sniffle, a tissue is better than a germ-spreading hand. Tissues can be a real benefit for blotting that spray from a lip trill or maybe dabbing the chin after a bit of tongue stretch work, although Walt Fritz has some better recommendations than a tissue or a sleeve for when doing some tongue work over in the first episode of the year, which I'll put in the show notes. If I remember correctly, in our episode on props and toys, Kaya Hersokani also spoke of using a tissue in vocal work. To help a singer visualize airflow and consider it a bit more tangibly, Kaya suggests blowing air through a straw onto a piece of tissue to see it ripple and blow. Then, removing these props, the singer can continue with a mental target of allowing air to pass through a bit more easily. So consider a box of tissues if you are in your own private teaching studio, and you can even treat yourself to a fancy container. Or if you are in a rented space or teaching in an institution, consider loading a few packs of travel tissues with you in your bag. Then we can send our singers and their sleeves away, snot and saliva free. Speaking of the sneezes, ideally, we want to keep our teaching space as free from allergy triggers as reasonably possible, like those that might come from our beloved pets. I say beloved, I don't actually have any, but I do have a theoretical carvapoo called Drax that I often think about, but my husband is fighting me for a ginger tabby cat. Anyway, I'm going to dedicate this next section to the memory of Lynn Hilton's late dog, Dexter. When Lynn first welcomed Dexter into her family, she informed clients and prospective clients about being a dog owner through email and pamphlets, and she knew it might be a bit of a deal breaker for her business for certain singers who didn't really like dogs. or who were unfortunately allergic. Pets are very much part of the family, and your home is still your home whether you teach from it or not. Therefore, it's a little unreasonable for your job to dictate who gets to be part of that family. But let me tell you, if you have a tarantula, I'm not coming over for tea. If you do have some furry friends, consider keeping them out of the teaching room to reduce triggering an allergic reaction. And you see, this is why I also am arguing for a Cavapoo, because they are hypoallergenic. It's the same case for dust, really. So just a sweep of the cloth, a run around with the Hoover and an antibacterial wipe will keep your space sparkling and hopefully sneeze-free. It's unlikely that there are going to be pets in institutional rooms, but if you want to make sure the room is clean and free of dust and germage hanging around, then maybe consider taking with you a pack of travel antibacterial wipes, just so you can cloth down the piano and the music stand if needs be. Now, if you're like me and have based your choice to not have children on the fact that you can barely keep a houseplant alive, then you might not need to worry so much about this next point. But if you like to have flowers or greenery in your space, then these can be pollen provokers, I'm afraid. According to Country Living and Greenhouse Direct, yes, you are still listening to the Singing Teachers Talk podcast, and no, you haven't tuned in to Gardener's World or anything like that. Plants like the peace lily, spider plants, and aloe vera plants can be less of an irritant. But of course, some of these can be toxic to children and pets, so just do your research. Otherwise, and without being regarded as an advocate for plastic, consider an artificial plant, as there are some that you can get which look really realistic, made from silk, and will brighten up your space. If you are in a rented space or an institution with pollen triggering plants, then consider speaking to the boss or the building owner and ask them to be removed, kindly giving them all the juicy details about itchy throats and postnasal drip. Unfortunately, the same goes for scented candles and diffusers, and I'm quite the hypocrite in saying that because I have a wood-fired scented candle right by my eye line and one on the shelf just behind me that says it's scented like a hug in a jar, whatever that smells like. We may not be medical professionals, but we're often first responders to the voice, really. And with that comes responsibility to know our limits and to refer confidently and compassionately when needed. Having a reference list of trusted professionals, ENTs, speech and language therapists, vocal rehabilitation coaches, physiotherapists, trauma-informed counselors, osteopaths, even body workers and life coaches can make all the difference. And if you scroll through this podcast, you can get a good yellow pages of people in those industries that you might want to contact and make part of your reference list. Not only does it safeguard your students' well-being, but it also reinforces a culture of collaborative and ethical care. You could create a documented list of referees, which you could have in a shared drive for singers to access. And you could even add some notes on specialities like great with singers, works in a specialist area of TMJ, or short waiting list, whatever it might be. And just make it something that you can update regularly. Even if a student chooses a different path or even chooses not to pursue any further help, then at least you've given them a starting point. I'm going to take a stand for two different stands now. One is a music one and the other is a computer one. Music ones are pretty standard, pardon the pun, in most music rooms and training. So hopefully this will be a given if you're working in an institution, for example. If not, perhaps ask the department head for some, or even purchase them yourself and use them in your private teaching, and then transfer them over with you when you head to a different teaching space. And then you can also put that, along with your speakers, on your expenses list. Music stands are a good way to help singers think of themselves as musicians. We want to make sure they are adjustable, and we may even want to consider having ones with those prongs if we envision maybe using them outside, for example. Without a music stand for sheet music, printed lyrics, a tablet, or even a phone can compromise posture as singers dip, protrude, and curl into a banana to follow along. At the very least, it's something to store keys and copious amounts of straws on. And as we mentioned earlier, it can hold our phones when we need a stopwatch And it can also be quite a good tripod for when we're recording a bit of a reel for social media. The second, as I mentioned, is a computer stand. Our necks and postures are just as important as the singers, so we don't want to be typing notes away on our computers or doing our online courses with a Quasimodo hunch now, do we? Otherwise, we'll have to put massage chair on the list too. Whilst a massage chair might be a bit of an unnecessary luxury, we probably should have some seating in our studios. One for us when we're at the piano, although Sarah did remind me of those gym balls that you can bounce on for your own comfort, and one for the singer and all the parents who might be accompanying them. A chair is not only a nice option for when you want to engage in your usual 5 to 10 minutes of catch-up at the beginning of each session, but it's also for the singer who is not able to stand for long periods of time due to their health or injury, or for when a singer may become ill and they might be hyperventilating or dizzy. A chair can be used in some of our training. For example, if a singer appears to be held quite stiffly, particularly in the torso, we can guide them to sit on the edge of a chair and lean over their knees like they're waiting for a bus or a train. Or perhaps we're doing some breathing work or following some awareness through movement tasks from the likes of Feldenkrais. When we had Becca Luter on the podcast talking about self-tapes, one of the things we discussed was lighting. And like me, Becca thinks adjustable lighting in the singing studio can be a huge benefit. Maybe not something that you have to have, but definitely something that can make a change. It's not just about aesthetics, it's about creating an environment that supports presence, focus, and emotional expression. Harsh or overly bright lighting can increase tension, trigger sensory discomfort, especially for neurodivergent students, and just give you a bit of a glaring headache. We don't necessarily want to make the space feel like a therapy room either, because we aren't that. But warm, adjustable lighting can promote calm and help us switch gears into a creative mode. If you teach in your own space and you want some of that adjustable lighting to create the ambiance of your business, your USP for your students you're working with, as I said, it's not an essential part of the studio setup. But if that's the direction you want to go in, consider investing in a lamp or dimmable compatible ceiling lights. If you're in a rented or institutional space, a portable clip-on light or rechargeable lamp can go a long way if you're allowed. Or if the room has its own dimmable lighting system, then set it to one that suits you and the student. In my private setting, I have a battery-operated lamp and a dimmable spotlight ceiling light. For me, it's about respecting the mood of the work and, let's be frank, how long I've got to spend in there as the teacher. We're not just training a mechanism, but we're navigating identity, vulnerability, and performance. And sometimes the difference between a student holding back or leaning into creativity comes with the ambience created in the lighting of the room. Just to balance the argument and give the other side across, musical theatre students might find themselves in auditions where the room is just not very inspiring. It's got a whole wall of mirrors, there are old props and sets tied to the walls, and there's nothing there that really gives them the mood of their song. So maybe adjusting the lighting for them in a room is not so helpful. Us as teachers need a reliable and secure way to take our notes. Ideally, we're not doing that on scraps of paper that we'll find under the sofa or in the dog bowl 2 weeks later. And if we are still using paper, then we need to consider the GDPR implications. Written notes with identifiable information or sensitive information are classed as personal data and must be stored securely. This means we might need a lockable cabinet. We might also need to invest in a shredder, but we're in the 21st century and increasingly teachers are going digital. A tablet or a laptop allows for quick note-taking during or after lessons, and apps like My Music Staff can be a really easy way for us to access the notes and also share them with the singer. My friend and singing teacher at institutions like Mount View, Jessica Friend, likes to set up a Google Drive folder for her clients where she can share the notes and insights from the lessons with them, which makes things really tidy, organized, and accessible. If we've got access to something like a printer, then we might be able to create progress sheets or technique trackers. I've been thinking about creating a sheet which has some battery charger symbols on them and they're labeled with different areas of technique, and getting the singer to colour in where they feel they are on that battery charged bit of the sheet so that they can also measure progress from week to week. Is it a good idea? Whatever we choose to do in terms of our notes, it can be really helpful for continuing on in our planning. It gives a sense to the student of continuity and that we care. Some singers can arrive at their lesson directly from the train, a rehearsal, rushing from a job, or even another class, and they feel bone dry. As we know, hydration is extremely important for vocal health, giving us flexibility and suppleness. So we want to remind a student to bring their own bottle of water with them. But in case they forget, we want to have access to a tap, or if you want to get a little bit fancy pants, then maybe we could consider a carafe with some glasses in the private studio, which singers can help themselves to, and that we can help ourselves to remind us as teachers to drink as well. Of course, we just have to be mindful of hygiene, especially if we're using shared cups. And if we're in an institution, then there are likely going to be some water fountains that we can ask the student to quickly go and visit to fill up their water bottles. Sometimes having a quick water break can help settle an idea that you've just explored, give a little bit of silent marinating, and just a little breather before you set into the next task. This next one is on my wish list and something that I really intend to get for my own studio. If we're working with CCM singers, pop, rock, singer-songwriters, R&B, access to a microphone and an amp is a gift. These singers are heading to the stage and will be using a microphone in their live performances. So we need to get that mic into the room with us when we are rehearsing or when we are doing a singing lesson. Just like earlier when we touched upon buying a piano, I'm not going to go into the details of what microphones or amps or monitors we might need because, to be honest, I need help there too. But it would be really helpful for us when we're training things like microphone technique, how to manage plosives, how to adjust distances depending on dynamics and depending on register and volumes, how we can use the mic as part of our performance. Plus, it can give singers a sense of professionalism, that they are real artists and that they are stepping into their artistry. So there you have it, a whirlwind tour through some of the essential, helpful, and the maybe could be's of the studio setup. Remember, it doesn't have to be pricey, it doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be Pinterest worthy. The teaching space is a reflection of our values as teachers, our pedagogical knowledge and informed understandings, a vision of our artistry, a welcome space for the singer's artistry, and a showing of the care that we can offer them and their development. Thank you for hanging out with me on this solo ramble. I'd love to know what you have in your studios, what you rely upon, what you couldn't go without in a singing lesson, and what you've put in there just because it reflects you as a teacher. Until next time. Hey you! If you're enjoying the Singing Teachers Talk podcast, then don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We are committed to bringing you engaging conversations and valuable insights from experts across the field of voice. By subscribing, it means we can continue to do that. You'll never miss an episode, and you'll be helping to spread the word to other singing teachers, vocal coaches, and overall voice nerds. So subscribe to this channel now and just watch your teaching grow.